Hello and welcome to my next hands-on tutorial. This time I would like to show you how to send transactional emails using Kotlin, Ktor and MailerSend. Sooner or later, every developer will have to implement email sending functionality in their application, and it's worth checking out various solutions to pick the one that will best meet our needs. And although the term transactional emails sounds complicated, in this tutorial I will prove how easily we can use them with Ktor and Kotlin. Of course, before we start, one important notice. In order to work with this tutorial, we'll have to have a MailerSend account. So if you don't have one, then please check out the description for the link to registration. And one note here. The link is a referral, and if you will purchase any paid plan, I will get a small commission for that. To be clear, this fact affects the merits of this article in no way. Of course, I wanted to mention that the free version will be fair enough for the purpose of this tutorial and also for the small projects as well. Additionally, we will need to have a domain which we can verify, and unfortunately, this is the requirement for any transactional emails providers. So, if we have a MailerSend account and a domain which we can verify, then we can proceed and configure the domain in MailerSend. With that being said, let's navigate to Google and type MailerSend. Let's hit enter. Right here you should see the domain MailerSend.com. This is the one that we would like to go to. And right here we can click login. On the next page, let's specify the email and password. I'll select keep me logged in and I'll sign in to the dashboard. Depending on whether this is your first visit here or the next one, you will see whether you verified your email address and whether you reviewed and accept the policies. As we can see, I have done it previously, so I can add a new domain. Let's click start and type the domain which we would like to verify. I'll put whatever.com. This is not a valid domain for me. Nevertheless, I wanted to show you what will be the next page after we click that. Right here, we can see that this is added, so the next step we'll have to do will be verifying our sending domain. Let's click start, and on this page we can see the values which we should put in our DNS provider. And this step will depend on your domain provider. Nevertheless, on the right side we can see that MailerSend prepared a couple of links with instructions for the most popular ones. After everything is done, just simply you have to select that you've added the DNS records and you can verify domain. Of course, this may take some time, so when you go with verify domain, you may not see the desired results. Let me close this one. That's a bit annoying. Okay, let's click recheck now. We can see that this is not verified yet. Of course, you will get an email if everything is successful. After some time, the domain should be verified. As you can see, I have changed to the valid one. So right now we can see the green ticks everywhere. Important notice, at this point, if we do not get approved, we will be able to send emails only to addresses inside our domains. So for testing purposes, this will be fair enough. Nevertheless, if you will be implementing that in your application, please remember about these steps, because otherwise you will not be able to send emails outside your domain. Let's navigate to domains on the left side. Click Manage. And let's generate new API token. This value will be used as a bearer token in order to perform API requests. Let's click the Generate New Token button and call it some token, for example. For the purpose of simplicity, I will go with the full access. Nevertheless, when working with real-life scenarios, please remember about customizing these values and giving the least necessary privileges required. Anyway, let's click Full Access and Create Token. Let's copy this value and save this because we will see this only once. Nevertheless, please always remember to not share this value with anyone. With all of that being done, we can finally generate a new Ktor project, and in order to do so, let's navigate to the Ktor project generator page. Let's tap here, Start Ktor.io. As we can see on this page, we can specify the values which we would like our projects to have, and as the first one, I'll rename this one into sending emails, for example. Right here I can adjust project settings, so let's click on it. We can specify our domain, so I'll go with coderc.com. Feel free to put whatever you would like to here. When it comes to the artifact, let's leave the defaults, Ktor version and engine as well. I would like the configuration to be inside the file, and I don't need the sample code. So as the next step, let's click Add Plugins. We don't need anything here, so let's generate project, and it is downloaded. Let's navigate to Show in Folder, extract the zip file, extract all, hit extract, and let's close this one. Nextly, let's open up IntelliJ. Nextly, let's click Open and navigate to the downloaded directory. In my case, this will be users, coderc, downloads, and sending emails. This is the folder with a small black icon near to it, which you want to click. Let's click OK. Nextly, let's click Trust Project. And we can see that Gradle is syncing, which means that it is fetching all the necessary libraries and dependencies and verifying whether the Gradle configuration is correct. In the meantime, we'll fetch additional dependencies which we'll need to proceed with our code. Let's open up Build Gradle KTS, and right here I'll duplicate this one. This is a shortcut Ctrl+D. I have a separate video about shortcuts which I recommend you to check out after watching this one. Nevertheless, right here we'll put a couple of additional dependencies which we'll need in order to query our API with Ktor client. So the first one will be Ktor, let me delete one, client, core, JVM. Let's duplicate this one. And the second one will be Ktor client, OK, HTTP, which will be used to query our endpoints. Additionally, we'll need two dependencies, one for content negotiation, and the second one will be Jackson in order to serialize and deserialize the values. So let me copy this line, paste it right here, and let's change the values. So I'll go with Ktor, client, content, negotiation, negotiation. Now let's duplicate this one, Ktor, serialization, Jackson. Let's hit the elephant once again and verify that everything is working as expected. We can see that the build is successful, so we can navigate to the main file and figure out whether the application will actually run. Let's click right here. The next time you can do that with Ctrl+Shift+F10. As we can see, we see that the app is responding at the localhost 8080, which indicates that everything is so far good. We can stop the application. Alternatively, you can do that with Ctrl plus F10 on Windows. And as the next step, let's configure our MailerSend client. As the first step, let's navigate to Resources and the configuration file. As we can see right here, there is some config already prepared, and this is like the default one, which indicates the port the app should be up and running and which modules should be run. Of course, we can adjust these files to our needs, and that's what we're gonna do. We'll add our custom configuration. Let's hit enter and specify MailerSend. Right here, I'll put two values and we'll externalize the config to environment variables. I would like the token to be provided as the environment variable. So right here, MailerSend token, Ctrl plus D, duplicate, and right here I would like the base URL to be externalized as well. Base URL. When we rerun the application now, it should fail because the values were not provided for our base URL and token as well. When working with IntelliJ, we can do that pretty easily by simply navigating right here, edit configurations, and let's edit the default created configuration. I'll call this app, and what's important here, let's already click Save Configuration. As you can see, this is not great anymore, which indicates that it will be persistent, and we will see that after logging back to our application. The next step, let's configure the environment variables, and let's specify our token and base URL. MailerSend token. And right here, we put the value I told you previously to save somewhere. And let's add another one, MailerSend base URL. So this value we can obtain by simply going to MailerSend documentation. So let's open up Chrome once again and get back to MailerSend. Right here, login. Right here, we have the link to the documentation, and we can see the value for base URL. I'm showing this explicitly because maybe at some point in the future, this value may be changed, so it's important for you to know where to find it. Let's get back to IntelliJ and set it right here, remove the enter, hit OK, once again, and now let's rerun our application. As you can see, the app is up and responding, which indicates that everything is working as expected. With that being done, we can firstly clean up code a bit, because although we've opted out from the automatically code generation, nevertheless this is still created and I would like to delete that. Let's go to application. Let's see the import, remove this line and also the associated import. We'll have to create our custom module in which we'll make use of the values which we set in application.conf file. So with that being said, let's create a new file and we'll call it a simple MailerSend client. Let's hit enter, and right here, let's create an extension function for application. Important one, this is this one, Ktor server application, and I will call it configure client. The first thing we'll have to do here will be to fetch the values from our environment variables. So let's introduce a new val token. And right now, in order to read these variables, we have to reference to environment.config property. And right here, we have to specify the path. So when you see right here, application, let's copy this value, enter dot, and this one in order to obtain the value. Finally, let's read this as string because this is the string value. Again, let's hit Ctrl+D, and right now we would like to read the BD base URL, and this is called the same, so I'll put it here. Okay, as the next thing, I would like to install content negotiation and inform Ktor that I would like to perform serialization and deserialization with Jackson. To do so, we'll create a new variable, MailerSend client, and we'll install HTTP client. In this block, let's install content negotiation plugin, content negotiation, and we can specify that negotiation should be done with Jackson. Lastly, let's prepare a run blocking block. This is because the Ktor client is fully non-blocking and based on coroutines, but in order to show you this example, I will do it this simple way. Lastly, what we have to do is get back to the main file and make use of our previously created extension function. In order to do so, let's simply invoke configure client. Again, let's rerun the application, Shift+F10, stop and rerun. And we can see that everything is working as expected and our environment variables were read correctly. At this point, all configuration is up and running and we have everything we need in order to perform requests. So we will start everything with adding a new data class which will be used to serialize the data into the JSON, which then finally will land into the MailerSend API. Let's create it. So let me click right here, new Kotlin class/file. Let's find data class and I'll call it email request. Request, because this will be used basically to perform requests. When it comes to the structure of this file, I highly recommend you to get back to the documentation and figure out the API resources right here. How does the response look like? Email resources, and how do we send emails, because basically all this information may change in the future and you may have to edit your codebase at some point. Nevertheless, let's get back to IntelliJ and let's prepare our email request. I'll start with val from, and this will be type recipient, and this will be an internal class. I don't want this to be a separate file, but rather the inner class. And similarly, I would like this to be a data class. So let me edit this. Here, the recipient should have two properties, email and name. So email will be a string, email, string, and a name also a string. Nextly, I would like to edit the email request and we'll add the next one. This time will be the list of recipients to which we'll be targeting the email. So this will be a simple list of recipient type. The next one will be the subject. So the text subject string value, which will be put into our email later. Nextly, val text. This value will be an actual body in case anyone blocks HTML generation. The next one, HTML. Right here as a string value, similarly, we will have the possibility to simply send an HTML formatted body for our emails. Finally, variables, and this one will be a new type, which I will go with list. Variable. Let me do it nullable because not all emails will have to contain that. And again, I'll create a new data class variable. And this one is actually pretty interesting Many times when you will be sending the emails, you would like to have the possibility to change the part of the subject or of the content depending on who you send this email to. And this way, we'll put a placeholders in our subject, text and HTML, and then a variable object which will contain the actual values which should be replaced with the template. The variable consists of two things, the email and the substitutions. The email is somehow an identifier and will indicate where the substitutions should take place. So, email, string value. The next one, substitutions, list, substitution. This one I would like to be similarly an inner data class right here, and it consists of two things. The first one, variable, and actually this should be named var when requesting. Nevertheless, this is the reserved keyword in Kotlin, so we'll have to do with a workaround with JSON property var, and let's call it whatever we would like to, because with with this annotation we simply tell Jackson to serialize this particular value with this field name. And this is of course type string as well. Lastly, value. I would like this to be always string value. The last thing I would like to do here will be to annotate the whole email request with JSON include and force Jackson to not include null values. So JSON include non-null. But what does it actually mean? Well, when I set variables right here to null value, it will not be serialized in this way, variables null, but rather simply it will not be attached to the serialized JSON payload. And with all of that being done, let me delete this one, format the file with Ctrl+Alt+L, and we can finally implement some function to send a single email. I'll do that in MailerSender client, but please remember in your real-life scenarios and projects to remember about the appropriate architecture. Right here, I'll create a new suspend function called send single email. This function will take 4 arguments. First one will be the MailerSend client, which will be of the type HTTP client. The next one will be the URL string and will contain the string to which we would like to perform request. Additionally, token. This will be a string value. And the last one, email request, which will be an actual payload to send to MailerSend. With all of that implemented, let me replace this with an equal sign and let's invoke MailerSend client post to the URL. Nextly, let's append some headers right here. Headers, and we'll append the bearer token to each request with the value which we read from environment variable. Append HTTP headers. Let's scroll to this one and authorization. I would like this bearer and put the token value which we'll provide right here. The next one, I would like the content type to be set to application JSON. We can do it right here, type and content type application JSON. Great. Finally, in order to set the payload, JSON payload, we'll have to do set the body. So let's invoke the set body method function and provide this with email request. So a quick recap. This function is responsible for sending post request to the specified URL, appending our bearer token, setting the content type, and the email request as a body. So with that being done, let's make use of this function and implement another one which will be responsible for invoking this one and handling the response. So right here, I'll go with suspend send simple message. So suspend function send simple message, and this one will be using MailerSend client of the type HTTP client, base URL, string, and token, also a string value. Nextly, let's prepare the actual content of the template which we would like to send. So the first one, each email will require some subject, so let's implement it. And hello from, for example, here, $company. Nevertheless, in order to work with the templating in MailerSend, we'll need the actual dollar value to be inserted into the send string. So right here in Kotlin, the $sign means string interpolation, and in order to escape that, we can go with this sign. And right now, the dollar will be actually a part of the string. As the next one, let's go with HTML and set this value 1, 2, 3. Let's go with hello, and for example, I would like the name to be bold. In order to do that with HTML, I'll use the B and escaping. Right here, we would like to put the name. Again, we'll have to escape the $sign. Nevertheless, this time it will be looking a bit different. So right here, hop, and let's put the $sign, name, and right here. So technically, when we serialize that, it will be simply something like hello B dollar name, and right here, because basically a dollar is an actually means interpolation in Kotlin. And for example, nice to meet you, in order to send the message. Similarly, let's do the same with the text value, because this one will be used if you do not parse the HTML. For example, the user blocks HTML in his emails. So I have duplicated that. For the text value, we'll simply go with a simple string without the HTML syntax. Lastly, we'll have to prepare the email request with our necessary information. So let's introduce a new variable, email request, and this will be email request type. Right here, I would like to set the recipient from, and it will be the recipient type again. Please remember that if we do not get the approval, we can send only from and to our domain emails. Right here, I will specify my email, and it will be example at test.coderc.com, because this is the domain I have verified. Name, I'll specify coderc. When it comes to, we need to specify the list of recipients. So please remember about that. And right here, let's specify new recipient email. I'll use example at test.coderc.com, and name, this time let's change this name to Piotr, for example. Nextly, as a subject, I would like to set the subject which we already prepared. When it comes to the HTML and text, the same, the text. Lastly, we'll have to provide some variables. So right here we use the placeholder, and for example in real life scenario, when you will have a list of plenty of users, you'll have the possibility to set the name for each user separately right here. With that being done, let's specify variables, and the first one, variable and the only one, because we will be right here sending only one email, will be email example at test.coderc.com. When it comes to the email, please remember that this will be simply the matching between the recipient and the variable. When it comes to the substitutions, again, we'll have to provide a new list of substitution, which is an inner data class for variable for email request. And right here, we will need to provide two variables, because first placeholder will be used for subject and the second one will be inside the email body. For variable, let's use company. For value, whatever company. The second one, substitution, this time for variable called name. I would like this to put value Piotr. Okay, so at this point we have the email request prepared, and what we have to do now will be simply invoke our previously created function and handle the response. With that being done, let's click enter, and right here, let's start with the response. Send single email, and right here for MailerSender client, I would like to provide the MailerSender client. For the URL, I would like to combine the base URL with the email path. For the token value, I will simply forward the token, and for email request, we'll pass the email request we just prepared. With all of that being done, the last thing we will have to do will be to handle the response, and in order to do so, we'll simply read whether the HTTP status code is accepted or otherwise the message sending error. Let's go with if response status equals accepted, then it simply indicates that everything went successfully and email was sent. Nevertheless, if this is not the case, then we have some error which we would like to verify what's going on with, and let's put right here email sending error. And the last thing to do here will be to get back to our run blocking block and invoke our function. So let's scroll up a bit, and right here send simple message, and for MailerSend client we'll pass the MailerSend client we have configured right here. For the token, similarly, we'll forward the value from this extension function, and lastly for the base URL, I'll forward the base URL value. As the last thing, let's click run the application, and immediately after the start the email should be sent. And what we can do now is simply go to our email provider and verify that everything is successful. In my case, let me pull this here. And right here we can see that the hello from whatever company and hello Piotr, nice to meet you. This simply indicates that our values were replaced correctly. Wonderful! We already know how to send emails. Nevertheless, if you would like to use a ready-to-go templates from MailerSend, then this step will show you exactly how to do that. Let's get back to MailerSend. Right here, I'll select dashboard and go to templates. As you can see right here, I have some template. I'll delete that and we'll prepare a new one. So let's click create a template, and right here we can select whether we would like to go with drag and drop editor, rich text editor or HTML editor. In this case I would like to show you drag and drop editor, which is fair enough in most cases. Let's hit choose, and right here we have the gallery of the templates, which we can use depending on our needs. I would like to implement a functionality pretty similar to resetting password in most of the systems, so I'll use the reset password. Let's wait a second until it is downloaded. And right here we can see on the right that we can insert many blocks to our template. What I would like to do simply will be removing this one, and I'll put some text value right here, which I would like to be parameterized as well. So right here I'll put my super generated code, which will be later replaced with the value I will provide when requesting to the REST API of MailerSend. Let's go with changing padding, top, bottom. Right here we have the design settings. So for example, I can change the font size right here. I can also do the same right here. And if that's all, of course, we can also edit this value. So for example, I'll remove this bottom. I'll remove this one as well. I am ready to go. After all, hit save and publish, and a new identifier will be generated for your template, which we'll later use to query the REST API. So as the next step, let's copy the template ID and navigate back to IntelliJ. Right here, we can do the same as we did with token and base URL. So I'll navigate to application, configuration file, and for example, I'll call it template 1. Right here, MailerSend and template 1. Let's edit configurations. Click environment variables. Let me make it right here. MailerSend template 1. And as a value, I'll put the identifier here. Let me hit OK, and let's get back to MailerSend client. On this line, Ctrl+D to duplicate the line, template 1 ID, and we have to change the property. So let me get back template 1 and put it right here. When it comes to the sending email, we have everything we need. The only thing we'll have to do will be to change email request, because the body will contain two fields which we will use instead. The first one will be template ID, and the second one will be the personalization, which will contain the list of our custom personalization. Let's navigate to email request. When it comes to text and HTML, I will do the same just like here, so that these values will not be serialized when we set them explicitly to null. Nextly, let me put right here the template ID, which will be string value. Let's make it nullable as well. Personalization, list of custom personalization. Similarly, I would like this to be nullable and non-serializable this way. Additionally, the template ID has to have the underscore in its name. So what I would like to do here will be use JSON property and specify template ID, so that this value will be serialized with underscore. You know this already, because we've used this right here when we were dealing with substitution and the keyword. Let's copy the custom personalization name and create a new data class called this way. The first property will be the email, just like with the variable. Email will be a string which will be used as an identifier of particular person to who we are sending anything. The next one will be data, and this will be personalization data, which I'll simply implement right here, again as the data class. And the personalization data will consist two fields. The first one will be name of a string value, and the second one should have the name which we used in the template. If you remember correctly, we can get back to the template. Let's click edit. So the first one will be the name and the second one will be my super generated code. I will copy this value and let me get back to IntelliJ, and now val name will be a string value. JSON property, let's start this time. Let's copy my super generated code and reset password code will be the value of string, technically, which is correct. I am missing val. And now we are ready to get back to our MailerSend client. This time, we'll implement a new function. Instead of send simple message, we'll call it send message using template. So let's start with suspend function, send message using template. Our function will have similarly 3 arguments: MailerSend client, base URL, and token of a string value. Just like we did previously, we will start everything with subject, which will be passed to our email, my whatever subject. Nextly, let's prepare email request. This time we don't have to specify neither the HTML value, neither the text value right here. So what we are doing here will be creating the email request directly, and this one will similarly contain the from value. So this was a recipient, and maybe let me get back right here and I'll copy this value from and to, because we'll use the exact same value. Of course, in the real-time applications, these values will be obtained dynamically. Nextly, let's go with subject and set it to the subject we created a couple lines above. When it comes to the template ID, now we'll have to pull it. So let me check out where we have this. Right here, template 1 ID. So what I would like to do will be simply, later we'll pass this. So I want this function to template ID to take 1 argument more, and I will pass this to the request body. Nextly, we'll have to deal with personalization, which requires us to specify a list of custom personalization, and I will go with custom personalization, which had 2 values. First one will be the email, so let me go with copying the value from here, right here, and put it here. Nextly, the data, which are the actual data which we will replace with the template when sending the request. And right here, there is the personalization data class, which we'll use to do name. Let's go with Piotr. And the second one will be code, which I wanted to be a string value. And let's generate some code at runtime random UID and specify this as a string value. Next, let's introduce a new variable response, and let's send the email, send single email, and we'll have to forward the MailerSend client. Exactly the same for the URL, so we'll use $, base URL / email. Nextly, the token value and email request, which will be the email request we just prepared above. Let me get back to the previous function and copy this if statement responsible for handling response status. Later I will show you how to deal with responses and serialize them, for example, to print out the more useful message. Anyway, let's copy these values, and right here I will display simply whether the email was sent or there was any sending error. With that being done, let's scroll up a bit. And right here, instead of sending simple message, let's use send message using template, which uses almost the same values except the last one, the template ID, and we will pass pass there the template ID 1 from environment variables. With that being done, we can restart the application and see whether everything is working as expected. And as we can see, we got this message that the email was sent, so now we will expect the email to come to our mailbox. Of course, please keep in mind, it may take a second before, and if you don't see any email, please go to the spam folder because there is possibility that it was sent to the spam. So as we can see, I got the email like 0 minutes ago about forget your password, the name is correctly set, and the unique ID was passed correctly as well, which indicates that everything is working as expected. Okay, so at this point we know exactly how to send simple email and put there a text value and HTML manually. We also know how to use a template, which may be useful for some users as well. And now it's time to learn how to handle errors. Let's get back to MailerSend and let's see how the JSON structure looks for errors. So firstly, let me open up right here. Let me go back. And again, we will navigate to API documentation. On the left side, let's select email, sending an email, and scroll down a bit and navigate to the responses. And for example, right here, we can see that the standard response code for the successful sending is 202 accepted. Nevertheless, if there is any validation error, then the response body will have the following message. Of course, you can also implement your wording and, for example, let it be your homework, but in this tutorial I would like to show you how to display errors, for example. So with that being said, let's get back to IntelliJ and implement the error response data class. Right here, let me go with new data class and call it error response. As we've seen, this should contain two things. The first one will be the message, and this will be a string value, and the second one will be errors, which I would like to be a map of string and list of strings. Let me tell you why. So let's get back to Chrome. And right here we can see that the value is not constant, but it will be dynamic and it will contain a list of errors related to the particular field when it comes to the validation. So let me get back to IntelliJ and let's proceed. The next thing I would like to do will be to go to MailerSend client and implement a new function, which we will call handle error. So again, suspend function, handle error response, and it will be a type HTTP response. And please keep in mind to select the IO Ktor client statement. This is the one which is returned and which we already used right here. So the next thing, firstly, I would like to know the status code. So we'll go with the same status code, response status value in order to get the integer value of our status code. Nextly, I would like to obtain the error body. And in order to do so, we have to invoke the body. And we have to specify to which class we would like this to be serialized to. And we'll specify error response, which we've just implemented. Nextly, let's implement a couple of loggers. So the first one will be println, and we'll specify that email sending failed with status code. So email sending failed with status code, and we can put it inside right here, and message. And I would like this message to also be, I see that I have a typo, so in order to rename the variable, Shift plus F6, this is the shortcut for Windows, error body. Nextly, I would like each error to be printed in a separate line, so let's go with error body, errors, and for each, right here we have two values. The first one will be field name, and the second one is a list containing field errors. So let's call it with a descriptive name right here. And I would like this to go with println. Let's go with 4 spaces, asterisk, field name. Right here I can put the field name, and has the following messages. And right here I would like to go with field errors. For each error, I would like this error to be also println. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example, right here. And I would like the error to be displayed. In order to format the code, Ctrl+Alt+L, and we can see them pop up stating that 4 lines were formatted and 1 unnecessary import was removed as well. So with that being done, the only thing we have to do now will be simply to replace these 2 statements. So I will go with only the simple message, and the homework for you will be to replace the same and have a couple of failed requests with templated function. For me, I will get back right here and go with handle error and specify the response to this function. In order to get a failed request, let's pass some invalid email and see what happens. So let me scroll up a bit. And for example, I would like the to value to be without the. So this time I would like to also this one to be invoked. So let me get back to here, send simple message and remove the template ID because this one contains only 3 arguments. Let me stop and rerun again. Shift plus F10 is the shortcut. And let's wait until the app restarts. We can see that the request failed with response status code 422 and the message which we printed. Also the field name 20, this is the index of the user that we are targeting, email, must be a valid email address, and the variable field does not exist in toEmail. So right here we have 2 errors. The first one is invalid email and the second one is that this value is missing in this list. And that would be all for this video about how to send emails using Kotlin, Ktor and MailerSend. Please keep in mind that you can find a link to a written article on my blog to the same post in the description for this video. I will be forever thankful if you would like to share some feedback with me in the comment section as well. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.